of billions of dollars of equipment that went to the hands of the Taliban, our enemy that we had fought against for decades. And then it goes to the Russia-Ukraine war. And then finally it comes to Israel from October 7th until now. And that will be the legacy of the Biden foreign policy. The Trump legacy from the first term was exiting the Iran deal, no land wars in Europe, and ultimately peace breaking out in the Middle East. There is nervous energy and anticipation of what leadership like President Trump can wind up bringing to the table. Now, you're asking the most important question: what will happen with Iran? And here I want to tip my hat to Israel. The worst mistake that the Biden administration made, and I disagree with lots of their policies, but the foundational challenge, they showed up to the Middle East and probably elsewhere in the world, but I know the Middle East better than I know most of the world. They showed up to the Middle East as though there never was a Trump administration. Team Biden showed up as though it was the third term of the Obama administration, both in terms of Iran, the Palestinians, the Arab-Israeli conflict, all of that. They showed up and said, okay, the Trump was an aberration. It didn't really exist. Let's just go. And that was evidenced by the fact that they couldn't even say the words Abraham Accords until after the Afghanistan debacle. That is one, I think, critical place where that winds up happening. The mistake that the Trump administration would make would be to say that there was no Biden administration. And the last 4 years are game-changing. Gaza today is not what Gaza was, with all of the challenges that are there. Hamas is not what Hamas was. Hezbollah is not what Hezbollah was. Syria is not what Syria is. The Houthis, they've been waking me up in the morning lots and lots of times. I don't know why they still exist. That in of itself is mind-boggling. But Iran has proven to also be the emperor without any clothes. So what President Trump had thought about from 2017 to 2021 is not the same President Trump that we're going to get in 2025. When he shows up to the office Monday at noon, Washington, D.C. time, he's going to see a drastically different Middle East.
So that's a question. So you say, will we see, because we know that Trump did many good things for Israel in the first period of the time. Will that change now, or when you speak about the change, you speak not necessarily about Trump, you speak necessarily about a different Middle East?
Yeah, sorry, let me put that in very good context. Israel has done an incredible job. Again, October 7th and all of the horrors that should not be forgotten. As long as there are hostages, all of the young men and the young women who have sacrificed their lives, the people who've run down to shelters. I'm not minimizing that for a half a second. The Jewish people in the state of Israel will have this period of time live on in our memory the same way any other tragedy that's happened to the Jewish people over the last 2,000 years. That is for sure true. But on a geopolitical level, Israel has remade the Middle East, and they've remade a Middle East that has potential for things that even the Trump administration the first time around could not have contemplated. And so when you ask about Iran, I have a pretty good idea of what President Trump would have done had he had a second consecutive term with Iran. What will he do with Iran today? It's almost silly to prejudge it. And here's where I want to tell you with great confidence. President Trump was great for Israel because it's great for the United States of America to stand with Israel. He will go down in history as the greatest friend of Israel from a president, but he will do that because he did it through the lens of America first. Every decision he made that was good for Israel was good for America. And he will go back and look at the U.S.-Israel lens the same way he looks at every country's lens, through that same perspective. And here's the advantage. Israel has chosen and proven to be a spectacular ally of the United States of America. And I think what we will see over the next 4 years are things that you and I and the rest of the panelists won't even be able to guess would be possible because, A, the world moves with such rapid. The last time you and I were on a Zoom together, there was a country called Syria led by Assad, right? And that wasn't more than 7 weeks ago. So things move pretty quickly over here. There will be an opportunity here, I think, to see a brand new, exciting Middle East because we'll have the leader of the free world want to lead.
In your opinion, I won't take any, guarantee of what you're going to say, but Do you think there is a possibility that United States will attack Iran if they won't stop with their nuclear developments?
President Trump answered this at the press conference last week. Why would he say? I certainly don't know, but if I did know, why would I say? I think the one of the great values that President Trump has brought to the table is that national security is not a publicly debated thing with press, certainly not, foreign press, etc. President Trump will do what is in the greatest interest of the United States of America, and he will try to get that right every time. Will he get it right every time? No human being has ever gotten it right every time. But I think that President Trump understands the dangers of Iran. I think he understands the dangers of a nuclear Iran, and he has vowed beforehand, and I believe that that vow will still stay there today. He will not allow a nuclear Iran.
So the last point I want you to address is going back to Israel. In your opinion, how should Israel navigate their policy? How do you think in the new administration in America should Israel react and work with the American new policy, new administration on the aspect with Iran, not necessarily with other countries, because we know that with the other countries, other threats, we also in this administration, we really worked freely, more or less. But with Iran, we always were careful. Do you think this will change now with the new administration?
What Israel's accomplished just in the last 6 months with Hezbollah and Iran, anybody who admires a country's independence will tip their hat and congratulate them. The United States of America, who shares an enemy called Iran with Israel, will be appreciative of what Israel has done, and any of those conversations will happen behind closed doors. Here's the one thing I will tell you with, I think, great certainty. The conversations that will happen in between this U.S. administration and Israel will happen publicly without any daylight, and privately where they disagree, and likely they'll disagree a lot because they're two different countries with two different goals. They'll make sure that that stays private, and they will be able to. Here's the way one of the senior Israeli diplomats described it to me beforehand. When President Biden's team came to them, they presumed that Israel was wrong, and Israel had to defend itself why it wasn't. When Israel came to President Trump and his team during the first term, President Trump's team assumed that Israel was trying to do the right thing, and if it didn't go that way, it asked for an explanation. How do we get there? And that's just a different type of relationship. There is no doubt in my mind that President Trump and his team will look for Israel to be safer, more secure, and more prosperous, not just because it's good for Israel, but because it's good for the United States of America. Now, here's my word of caution to Israel. I would spend a lot of time trying to figure out how you work on the things that are good, that's good for President Trump. And that's going to be trade, and that's going to be jobs, and that's going to be technology. In the battle of the United States of America against China, which hopefully will only be a battle over business and technology, Israel will play an outsized role. Will its technology be completely and totally guided towards the West, or will Israeli technology go after easier dollars to the East? This is not an economic question. This is a national security question. When I grow up in an Israeli high school, I want to know that the technology that I develop needs to be for my security. My security means America's security. And I think that that's something that doesn't seep enough into Israeli DNA, and hopefully it will.
Well, thank you, Aryeh. I think we all saw yesterday the next Secretary of Defense in America, where he spoke very, very clear about the importance of defending Israel and killing every Hamas member. So we'll see. We hope that all the things that we hope for will happen, and the safety of Israel will, in this new administration, will be safer as it is today.
Can I just close on one thing with that?
Absolutely.
Why does it matter what Pete Hegseth says about Israel, and why does it matter that he speaks so clearly? By the way, it matters to Israel, but you know who it matters a lot more to? Not more to. As an American, it matters dearly to the kids on college campus. It matters dearly to the kids. When the senior American defense official says that there is no comparison between Hamas and Israel, there's no comparison between the terrorists and the victims of terror, that sets a very clear mark to the country. We've been unclear about that since October 7th with this current administration. That clarity will help extinguish anti-Semitism. We should make him an honorary board member of CAM. He speaks with great clarity about good and evil, and I think that's important. Thank you, Yigal.
Thank you very much, Aryeh. We'll see how it will go. Just in a few days, there will be a new president in America, and we hope that this will be very good for Israel, as it was in the first term. Thank you so much, Aryeh.
Thank you.
For the next time. Okay, so we focused on Iran now and the American policy, and we're going smoothly down south to Israel, where we're going to speak with Dennis Citrinowicz, that is an expert on Gaza and Yemen, the Houthis. I didn't know just a year and a half ago that we need to have an expert on Yemen and the Houthis, but apparently there were people that were prepared for this. So Dennis is a research fellow in the Iran program at the Institute of National Security Studies. Dennis served as 25 years in variety of command position units in the army, in the IDF, and including as a head of the Iran branch and research and analyst division in the Israeli Defense Intelligence, and as a division representative in the United States. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Dennis, it's not the first time that we're having you. So if we have you again, probably you were very, very good. So thank you for joining us again in that aspect. But today we're going to speak about the Houthi aggression from Yemen. Many people don't really understand, where did they come from? Why now? What is this? Okay. And I would love if you can explain a little bit, who is giving them ammunition? Who is giving them money? Why do they hate us so much, specifically Yemen? And how come they have such an advanced weapon, advanced missiles? Just last night, 2 days ago in the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, everybody in Tel Aviv and the area waked up exactly at 3 o'clock in the morning because of rockets, and it's actually hit next to Jerusalem. So my question for you is, why now? Why in the last 1.5 years ago, when October 7 happened, why did the Houthis wake up in a way of attacking Israel? And if you can also speak about, will the Houthis, in your opinion, continue their aggression against Israel, although there will be, hopefully, an agreement with Hamas? Please.
Again, thank you very much for having me again here. And who would believe that we will speak about the Houthis in Yemen, and also that they will lead the axis of resistance activity, especially after Israel had such a significant achievements against Hezbollah and Hamas and the Shiite militias in Iraq. But I'll try to say that just from the beginning, to understand that the Houthis is actually a family, a tribe, that lives in the northern part of Yemen, close to the Saudi border. They are Shiites, not exactly the same Shiite type as the Iranian regime, but they are Shiites, and they manage to take over Yemen, exploiting human weakness after the Arab Spring. And immediately after they took over Yemen, or most part of Yemen, not all part of Yemen, because the south part of Yemen is still controlled by the regime that's being supported by Saudi Arabia and UAE. They were fought, or Saudi Arabia started a war against them, preventing Hezbollah model to be built near their borders. It was a fierce war, lasted for more than almost 5 years, when the Saudis attacked almost everything in Yemen, and still the Yemenis the Houthis were able to launch rockets and missiles against strategic outpost locations in Saudi Arabia, like airports and oil depots. They are fierce, they're resilient, and especially ideologically speaking, they hate the Jews. Just looking at their slogans, there are the slogans saying, God curse the Jews, and may Israel will fall down. And that's actually tells us a lot about their ideological behavior towards Israel. In the past, they always threatened to attack Israel, but since the 7th of October, they actually implemented those threats. They have interesting connection to Iran. They are not Iranian proxy in the way that the Iranians can tell them what to do, but they rely heavily on Iranian weapons that are being smuggled to them through Oman and through the Red Sea. Now, Iran has interest to strengthen Yemen, the Houthis in Yemen as a proxy that actually constantly threaten Saudi Arabia. But since the 7th of October, the Iranians used them in order to pressure Israel in order to stop the war in Gaza. They supply them UAVs, advanced missiles. Actually, most of the equipment right now is being produced indigenously in Yemen. The Yemenis, the Houthis are still relying on the Iranians for certain things, but most of the production being happening actually in underground facilities in Yemen. So since 7th of October, they start attacking Israel, but also they did something equally problematic. They attacked ships that moved in Bab el-Mandeb Straits towards Israel, but not only toward Israel, and thus hurting not only the Israel economy, but the international economy in terms of ships that had to go through the through Africa, Good Horn Cape, and not through Bab el-Mandeb and Suez Canal. It significantly damaged the income of Egypt, a very important country in the Middle East, because they rely heavily on their income from ships moving in Suez Canal. They lost billions of dollars from the Houthi activity. The main problem that we have with the Houthis is for Israel is, of course, they are far away, or more than 2,000 kilometers. Therefore, Israeli Air Force has proven in the last month that he's able to fly this distance, hit strategic sites in Yemen. But the second problem arises is the fact that we are not able to create some sort of deterrence equation against them. Like the war that they conducted against the Saudis, they're actually getting a lot of strength from those attacks. It's hurting them, but it actually shows to the axis at the regional, as they see, and the regional countries, that actually they are forced to be reckoned with. And they continue launching rockets and missiles, like you mentioned, almost every night, just to trying to increase the pressure on the Israeli government to stop the war in Gaza. Now, where the future holds in that regard, it's obviously, it's important to say that not only Israel attacking the Houthis, but also the coalition headed by the US forces in the Red Sea, in the last year, more or less, attacking not strategic or, let's say, infrastructure targets in Yemen, but more the command and control activity of the Houthis and the production sites, equally important in that regard. But it's really scattered. It's not a real campaign being conducted against the Houthis. It's important, but it's not creating a lot of activity in terms of pushing or threatening or preventing the Houthis from launching those rockets and missiles and UAVs against Israel. So where we are...
Can I just stop you there? Just on that point. What does that mean? It means that we were not aware that the Houthis gained so much experience and weapon from all those years. Did we know about it? How did we come to this situation that we just can't stop them?
So I'll divide it. It's a very important question. I'll divide it by maybe A, B, and C answers. The first answer is connected to the fact that as it's Israel concerned, we are much more focused on the immediate threat. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Shiite militias in Iraq, everything happening in Syria. The Houthis, we knew them. We knew that they have strong connection with Iran, but we didn't have to pay attention because we had to focus on more immediate threat. This is one. The second, we have to remember that most of the time, the Houthis were occupied with the war in Saudi Arabia, so we assume that they are on the defensive side all the time. And I think that we didn't think that they have the necessary capabilities in order to strike Israel. And you have to remember that in the end of the day, when Israel was, we were attacked from Lebanon and from Gaza, once in a while a missile coming from Houthis in Yemen or one UAV coming towards Tel Aviv, it was not important to end those activities. Now, then the axis is really weakened. These attacks actually, now the only attack that the Axis is doing acting against Israel. So it's getting a lot of momentum and attention in that regard. So it's a combination of, yes, we knew about that. Yes, we had much more other priorities, and the distance and the lack of intel is actually is coming into effect. It is important to say that the Houthis is not only the Israeli problem. The fact that they are preventing ships from moving into a very important a geopolitical location like the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, this is a problem for the international community. It's also a problem for, like I said, from Egypt, for other regional countries like the UN and Saudi Arabia that used to fight against the Houthis and still think that it's the most dangerous threat for them right now in the region, although they're preferring not to fight against them directly right now from obvious reasons. So I think in that regard, we have to join hands, work with the coalition, making sure that we are limiting the ability of them to launch their capabilities against Israel. And in the end of the day, I think we don't have any other choice looking into the future and to topple the regime. It's going to be very hard to do, but working with the Gulf states, our close partners in the region, in the Gulf, and the fact that they have a foot on the ground or in terms of their own proxies in southern part of Yemen, can help that it happen. I have to say one important thing about that is also connected to what's happening today in Gaza. The Houthis are saying when the war in Gaza will stop, and hopefully we'll have a ceasefire soon in Gaza, then we'll stop launching our capabilities towards Israel. But that will not solve the problem because the genie is out of the bottle. And even if it will stop it today, maybe if in a couple of weeks we'll have an encounter with the Hezbollah, with Hamas again, they will launch again their capabilities. So we have to take that into consideration. Now, Iran, there's a lot of question about the connection between Iran and the Houthis. Unfortunately, even if we're going to hit Iran, blaming them for what the Houthis are doing, it won't stop the Houthis from acting against Israel. I'm not saying that putting Iran accountable for the Houthis' actions, it's the wrong thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do. But it's not going to help us stop the Houthis from launching those rockets. What will stop is two things. First, as I said, reaching a ceasefire in Gaza, that it's a temporary stop, but it will stop the launching from Yemen. And the second thing, of course, is putting them on the defense mode, significantly increasing the attacks, the Israeli one and the coalition one, and of course, aiming their top leadership. That will, I think, will put them in a lot of problems in terms of the capabilities of launching those capabilities of rockets and UAVs against Israel. So it's not going to be easy. They are fierce enemy in a way that we don't know them. They are far away, and we don't have the ability to create a deterrence equation with them. But we have to remember that despite everything that they're doing, they are not Hezbollah threat towards Israel, not Hamas, meaning they cannot put a strategic threat towards the state of Israel. They're annoying. They're causing a lot of problems in terms of the economy, not only to us, but also to the Eilat port, for example. But it's still not a strategic threat like we cope with Hezbollah or with Iran in that regard. But we have to look into the longer period of time, building a long-term program that will allow us, in the end of the day, us, the Saudis, the UAE, the United States, and the coalition to topple that regime. We don't have any other choice because, like I mentioned, if it will stop the activity today or tomorrow, when it's going to be ceasefire in Gaza, then the day they will return using their kinetics to blackmail us, to blackmail the Saudi or the UAE for their own good. This is something that we cannot accept for the longer period of time.
Very interesting, and I think many of our audience got more information that they knew about it, so thank you for that. Just in a minute, because we want to move to the next speaker, can you tell us what's your vision, what the day after the deal with Hamas in Gaza, what will happen in Gaza, who will rule in Gaza, in your opinion? I mean, Israel was very, very clear that what's happening, that the main mission of the operation of the war is to defeat Hamas. Do you believe that Hamas is defeated, will be defeated, is going to be the Palestinian Authority there? What's your vision?
Yeah, well, I think that the situation in Gaza is extremely complex. Hopefully, we'll reach a ceasefire and release the hostages. I think it would be the first priority of the state of Israel, returning back the hostages, those, of course, who was alive, and unfortunately, those who died. In order to close that chapter, it's important, first and foremost, for the families, for the Israeli population. I think that it's crucial because, it's connected also to the unwritten contract between the Israeli citizens and the Israeli government in terms of what will happen when Israel is in need. And I think that it's crucial, it's important above everything else in that regard. But we have to remember that assuming that will happen, then we still have the question of who will control Gaza. I think there are three, of course, options in that regard. First is Israel occupying Gaza. I hope it won't happen because it will have a significant effect on our legitimacy, on our connection, of course, with Trump administration. I'll touch that, of course, in a minute. And, of course, the issue of the economy. I think that it's a wrong thing to do. The second is Hamas, and Israel said that we are not willing to allow this organization to continue controlling Gaza. So the third option, again, nothing is good option in terms of, we don't have good and bad options. We have options with pros and cons. And I think looking at returning back to the Palestinian Authority has more pros and cons. It's not that the ultimate body that I think that is controlling Gaza will solve our problems. But I think it will do something extremely important, also connected to President Trump's vision in that normalization with Saudi Arabia. There won't going to be any normalization with Saudi Arabia if Israel will annex Gaza Strip or annex the West Bank and collapse the Palestinian Authority. It will happen if and only if we'll draw back from Gaza and will give the Palestinian some sort of political horizon. I'm not talking about building a two-state solution, and I'm not talking about fulfilling that immediately. I'm talking about a vision that Israel will be committed to. It's crucial because when you're looking at the 7th of October and where we are right now, from the kinetic standpoint, we did miraculous things in terms of actually almost eliminating the axis of resistance that Iran actually controlled in the last 20 years. But politically speaking, if we want to increase the pressure on Iran, I think this is the main thing that Israel tried to do now, preventing them from reaching nuclear capabilities, military one. The best solution will be a normalization with Saudi Arabia and joining hands with the Gulf states. It will only happen if we'll give something politically to the Palestinians in terms of horizon. And that's also including returning back the Palestinian Authority back to Gaza. I think that Hamas is willing to forego their ability to control Gaza. We still need to wage a campaign preventing Hamas from not building their forces. Hamas, when he launched the war, he was a terror army. Now there are terror guerrilla groups. This is our main achievement. It's not that Hamas is defeated in a way that there is no Hamas activists in Gaza. There is, unfortunately. But in order to finding some sort of positive solution from the dire situation that we're in the 7th of October, returning back Palestinian Authority, keeping the campaign against Hamas from not building its capabilities, but mainly use that in order to have normalization with Saudi Arabia. I think that will be a win, not only from the kinetic side or military side, but also from the political side.
Thank you very much. I feel that we can speak for hours about it, and hopefully there will be a bright future for Israel after this deal with the hostages. Thank you so much, Dennis, and I'm sure we're going to see you again in the next briefing that we're going to have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to our next and last speaker, and we're going up to the north. And in the north, we have both Lebanon and Syria. And with us today, we have Avraham Levine. And Avraham is the media director and one of the main geopolitical speakers at Alma Center. He served in the IDF Golani Infantry Brigade in a number of combat roles, including in Lebanon and Judea and Samaria. Avraham still serves as an IDF intelligence officer with the reserve unit every year. Avraham, welcome and thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes. So a lot of things happened in the north of Israel. And I want to take the opportunity and speak with you about two countries that we are dealing with now and what's happening inside that country. It's like a feeling of a country in a country. And I would like to start with Hezbollah. In your opinion, the effect of the ceasefire in Gaza, how would that affect the Hezbollah strategy on the North Front? We know that Hezbollah, IDF really did a massive damage for Hezbollah, but we also know that Hezbollah is still strong. In your opinion, what is the point that Hezbollah will decide not to attack, and is it because of the ceasefire in Gaza?
So I'd like to start, just to keep things optimistic here before we drill down, and say that here in the north, as a resident of the north, I live in the Golan Heights. Alma Center is in the Galilee, Western Galilee, so I'm back and forth all across the north. It's a beautiful time to be in the north, and it's a fairly quiet and calm time these past few weeks. So everybody's welcome to visit and come see. But now we have to drill down and see who's on the other side of the border. And you asked a good question about the effect of Gaza. There's a few other important developments that are happening currently. So obviously, just a quick reminder, 9 months of back and forth between Hezbollah and Israel from October 8th to the summer of 24. The unavoidable escalation. Eventually, IDF attacks the leaders of Hezbollah, including Nasrallah, and a lot of the weapons and communications. Right, the beeper was a very dramatic, impressive success, and eventually, IDF initiates the limited operation into South Lebanon to sort of keep a buffer zone in the north, but this time inside Lebanon instead of the evacuated towns that were empty ghost towns for a very long time. And eventually we reach a ceasefire. We're about 50 days into the ceasefire since November 27th. So 10 more days, give or take. And what's happening right now? So we see IDF continuing their operations all across Lebanon. Wherever IDF sees a threat, there's a notification to US to make sure that can they take care of this through the channels of Lebanese army, the channel of UNIFIL, for all it's worth. Resolution 1701 did not work from 2006 up to now. For some reason, we're trying it again. But if that doesn't happen, then IDF is attacking in Lebanon and actually continuing the operations all along the ceasefire. And Hezbollah is not attacking. So it seems like Hezbollah right now is interested in the ceasefire. I'd add that if Hezbollah did not want a ceasefire, it would have been signed, because Hezbollah can veto any major decision in the government. And if they agreed under the pressure of US to the ceasefire, apparently Hezbollah needs a break and are probably taking advantage of that and trying to rebuild. We see signs up all across Lebanon, especially South Lebanon and the towns that were that have a lot of damage in the past year in South Lebanon. Large signs. One side is the flag of Hezbollah, one side is the flag of Iran, and this is our gift from the Irani people to Hezbollah, where they're rebuilding and trying to come back as strong as possible. So that's one side of the situation. Another side is the political developments in the past 2 weeks. A new president. Lebanon did not have a president since October 22. And now they managed to choose Joseph Aoun. He was the commander of the army up to now. Actually, according to their law, he cannot immediately change from one position to the president position. They sort of ignored it because they had to choose a president. President is the one in charge of the army. He's always traditionally a Maronite Christian. Joseph Aoun fits that description and was in charge of the Lebanese army, so he has the experience. He's saying the right things in terms of stability on the border with Israel. We even saw signs that are sort of a little bit against Hezbollah, with the picture of Joseph Aoun, with his profile picture. We don't know who's putting up all these signs, but instead of the classic Hezbollah logo and signature of people land resistance, it's people army state. So he's even standing up against Hezbollah in a very subtle way. And we have a new prime minister taking over. Instead of Najib Mikati is Nawaf Salam, Sunni Muslim. Both of these people are not known for their support of Israel, but are sort of saying the right things about stability, about Lebanon rebuilding itself. And the big question I think we all have is, do they have the power? Are they able to make a change? And you said it looks like there's a country within a country. And our head of research, Tal Be'eri, likes to say that what you said is true. But he says Lebanon is a country within Hezbollah, not the opposite. And he says that because Hezbollah is backed by Iran, which is way bigger, way stronger. And in many ways, everything's in the hand of Hezbollah still, even though there's a new prime minister and a new president. And I'm sort of, we've had enough lessons learned to be still suspicious and pessimistic about the ability of the Lebanese army to stop Hezbollah. And that's why we see IDF continuing their operations under the rules, under the ceasefire agreement, but continuing the attacks all across Lebanon. Every time we see weapons being transferred, Hezbollah threats rising, IDF is still attacking there.
Let me ask you, Avraham, if we go to Syria, we have a new regime, a new authority there after so many years with the Assad family ruling this country. Do you find a change? Do you see a change about their policy with Israel? As well, if you can also speak about the jihads that are there in the north part of, we know that IDF has, for, I don't know when it was the last time, but they are actually in Syria now. Would that stay? What's your aspect? What's going to happen in Syria now?
Well, a couple of hours ago, I went on my run with the dog, and from what I saw in the sky, I guess that 2 hours ago was the last time. And you'll follow the news. My guess is it will be on the news in the next couple of hours of what happened in Syria in the past few hours. I think what happened in Syria is the opportunity came knocking for Erdogan and the rebels. And sometimes here in the Middle East, the perceived weakness is more important than the real situation. We look back to October 7th. They perceived us as being too weak to retaliate, and that's why they went for it. I think Erdogan and the rebels saw a weak Lebanon, a weak Hezbollah, I should say, my mistake, and they saw a hesitant Iran. Remember, Iran owes us a third strike. They called it the true promise, the 2 attacks. First one was back in April, later on July or August. And they sort of backed down from the third attack when after the elections in the States and Trump's victory, and they sort of stepped down. They said, because Trump won, we'll wait and see what happens. I think that was also seen as being hesitant, as being a little weak, not focused. And I think we saw them taking the opportunity with both hands and did very well. An amazing achievement, 10 days taking over a country. The question is, who's the leader there? First of all, I think Erdogan is a very strong force there. Maybe Turkey more than anyone else taking over instead of Iran and Russia. And we have a new leader, as you said. So I just checked again a few minutes ago before we started. I went into Google and I wrote new leader in Syria 2024. And apparently his name's Ashara, which is funny because I remember a few weeks ago his name was Julani. So apparently the new branding and advisors told him, get rid of the jihadi nickname Julani. Julani as in Golan, where I live, as in where the goal to reach. And go back to your own name. He also lost, the army clothing, switched into a more Zelensky style, and later on even bought a suit, shaved his beard a little. And now we have a modern leader, and we see most of Europe buying into this completely. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm saying I'm still waiting for the verdict. I want to know if he's a jihadist or is he really looking to change Syria? Because we saw 10 years ago, we saw the Arab Spring, and mostly what happened was a kidnapping of the revolution by the Muslim Brotherhood. It wasn't the democracies that won. It wasn't the younger generation liberal students that won. Definitely not the female students that started a lot of the Arab Spring 12, 13 years ago. It was the Muslim Brotherhood taking over. And if we have a jihadi state in our hands, a new neighbor about 4 kilometers from where I am right now, then we have a difficult situation. I think 10 years ago, we sort of had a choice between rebels and Assad. Now we do not have a choice. That's the new neighbor, and that's what we're reacting to.
Avraham, thank you very much. It's another question mark. What's going to happen there? Who could believe if we would speak here a year ago that this was going to happen in Syria? But things happen, and hopefully it's going to be for the best. I would like to thank you for everything you do. Alma Center is a very, very important center that also CAM works together with them. So thank you for all your work and the whole your team, and hopefully see you in the next briefing that we're going to have. So keep safe.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today in the online briefing. I hope you got a bit more knowledge where you were 49 minutes ago. And I welcome you to the next online briefing that we're going to have. I know that there's a few questions coming up, but we are above our time, so unfortunately we can't. But if you send us your questions, we will forward it to our speakers for that. So I will just finish and say, and I think that everybody are joining me with this message, that we hope to see all 98 hostages back safe to Israel as soon as possible, and to end this suffering of the families of the hostages. Thank you very much, everyone. Litraot. Thank you.